Power and respect are often intertwined in ways that shape human interactions, business negotiations, and the unspoken hierarchies that govern society. When people gather at a table to discuss billion-dollar deals, one might assume that professionalism, equality, and mutual recognition are the default. Yet, history and lived experiences show that respect cannot always be purchased, no matter how much money is on the line. Respect is the silent currency that makes all other forms of currency meaningful, because without it, power becomes shallow, and wealth loses its ability to create trust or build legacies. The theme of power and respect becomes particularly sharp in scenarios where a marginalized individual enters spaces long dominated by others, where their presence itself disrupts an assumed order, and where their authority tests the willingness of others to acknowledge their humanity beyond the size of their portfolio. To understand the gravity of power and respect in such contexts, one must look at the dynamics of identity, perception, and social status. A Black woman who rises to the position of a CEO embodies not only personal ambition but also the struggle against multiple layers of systemic bias. The title of CEO in itself signals power, accomplishment, and command over an organization that likely employs thousands and generates substantial revenue. Yet, the societal lens through which she is seen may not automatically grant her the respect she deserves. For some, particularly those whose privilege has insulated them from questioning their own status, her presence at the head of the table may seem like an anomaly, a disruption of what they imagine as the natural order of things. This reveals a tension. Power is visible and quantifiable through numbers, assets, and influence, but respect is deeply subjective, tied to biases, prejudices, and unspoken rules of recognition. In business, deals as large as $900 million are rarely about just the numbers. They involve egos, trust, reputations, and the shared belief that both parties are worthy partners. A CEO who comes to such a negotiation brings not only the weight of her company's value but also her personal credibility and the respect she commands in the industry. However, when a billionaire family mocks her, they strip away the veneer of mutuality and reveal the imbalance they wish to impose. Their wealth emboldens them to treat her as less than equal, to test whether she will swallow the insult for the sake of the deal. In this moment, the clash between power and respect becomes evident. She has power through her company's assets, through her ability to finalize or cancel the deal. Yet, respect is being withheld, as if they are daring her to accept wealth at the cost of dignity. Respect cannot be faked. It must be genuine, or its absence quickly corrodes trust. When individuals are mocked, especially in professional settings, the insult is not only personal but also symbolic. For a Black female CEO, the mockery carries layers of historical weight, recalling generations where Black individuals, and particularly women, were denied authority, dismissed in intellectual spaces, and judged not by their accomplishments but by stereotypes. Thus, the family's disrespect is not merely a slight, it is a reinforcement of old patterns of exclusion. Their laughter or sneers are attempts to put her back in a box where she is the outsider, unworthy of equal treatment, even though she holds the power to finalize a transformative deal. Here, respect is not about manners but about recognition of her right to be there, her earned authority, and her status as an equal partner. This dynamic shows how fragile the relationship between power and respect can be. Power can be recognized on paper. She is the CEO, the deal is in her hands, the market values her company at a certain worth, but respect operates on a more emotional and cultural plane. The family's decision to mock her suggests that they do not see her power as legitimate, or they believe their wealth insulates them from needing to show deference. Yet in doing so, they miscalculate. They assume that her desire for financial success will outweigh her demand for respect. This assumption is rooted in a worldview where money is seen as the highest prize, and where those historically excluded from wealth are presumed to be desperate enough to endure disrespect for a seat at the table. But the true nature of power is revealed when it can be exercised without compromise. By canceling the $900 million deal, she asserts that respect is not negotiable. The money, while immense, is secondary to dignity. In refusing to continue under their mockery, she demonstrates that her power is not dependent on their validation but on her own authority and choices. She communicates a broader message, that respect is the foundation upon which any true partnership must stand. Without it, no amount of money can create stability or trust. Her decision reframes the meaning of power. Rather than being the ability to accumulate more wealth, power here is defined as the freedom to walk away when respect is denied. This theme also highlights the performative nature of wealth and status. The billionaire family mocks her because they believe their money gives them license to demean others. They conflate wealth with superiority, forgetting that power without respect becomes hollow. In contrast, her decision exposes their weakness. Despite their billions, they are unable to force her compliance. Their mockery was meant to reinforce their dominance, but it backfires, leaving them not only without the deal but also with reputational damage. The industry will not only remember the lost opportunity but also the reason behind it, their inability to treat a powerful woman of color with the respect she deserved. Here, respect proves to be the more enduring currency, one that defines legacies far more than dollar amounts. There is also a psychological dimension to this theme. Respect affirms one's identity and humanity. To be respected is to be seen fully, to have one's achievements acknowledged without caveats or mockery. For individuals from marginalized backgrounds, respect is often hard-won, achieved through relentless work, resilience, and breaking barriers. Thus, when it is denied, it feels like an erasure not only of the individual but of the struggle and progress they represent. For a Black CEO, being mocked in that moment is not simply about her personal pride, it is about the disrespect shown to every barrier she broke to be there, to the employees who look up to her, to the communities she represents. Canceling the deal becomes not only an act of self-preservation but also an act of leadership, a declaration that her success will not be tethered to humiliation. Respect in this context becomes more valuable than wealth because it sustains the soul of leadership. Leaders must command not just obedience but also admiration and trust. A CEO who tolerates mockery for financial gain may secure the deal but lose credibility with employees, peers, and the broader community. On the other hand, a leader who walks away affirms that respect is the foundation of sustainable power. Employees see that their leader will not compromise dignity for profit, inspiring them to value themselves more and to align with her vision. Industry peers recognize the strength required to cancel a massive deal, understanding that such resolve sets new standards for how business should be conducted. Communities watching the incident see a powerful message, that their worth is not contingent on others' approval, and that true power is the ability to define the terms of engagement. The theme of power and respect also extends beyond the immediate scenario into a broader commentary on society. Too often, individuals from historically dominant groups believe that their wealth or status grants them unchallengeable authority. They assume that others will bend to their will for financial gain. But moments like these disrupt that assumption, proving that marginalized leaders are not merely guests at the table but architects of the future. Respect becomes the lever through which the old order is challenged, and power is redefined not as dominance but as integrity. In business schools, case studies often emphasize profit margins, negotiation strategies, and market dynamics. Rarely do they focus on the intangible but crucial element of respect. Yet, this theme reveals that deals worth billions can collapse not because of financial miscalculations but because of interpersonal arrogance. Respect is the glue that holds partnerships together. It is what allows people to trust contracts, to envision long-term collaboration, to believe that their values align. Without respect, contracts are fragile, and partnerships are doomed. The cancellation of the $900 million deal illustrates this vividly, showing that the absence of respect outweighs even the promise of vast wealth. Respect in this narrative is not simply politeness or civility. It is the acknowledgement of equality, the refusal to diminish another's humanity, and the recognition of achievement without prejudice. It is the act of treating a Black CEO as an equal partner, not as a token presence or a target of mockery. When denied, it reveals more about those withholding it than about the one being denied. The family's failure to respect her exposes their insecurity, their inability to adapt to a world where leadership is diverse, and their reliance on outdated hierarchies. Her response reveals strength, clarity, and a vision of power rooted not in domination but in dignity. Conflict and resolution are at the core of every compelling story, whether in literature, cinema, or real life, because they mirror the struggles and choices that define human existence. In the context of a Black female CEO entering negotiations with a billionaire white family, the conflict arises not simply from numbers or contractual disagreements but from the clash of values, perceptions, and power. A conflict is more than just an argument, it is the collision of two opposing forces, each convinced of their own supremacy, each determined to shape the outcome in their favor. Here, the conflict is both external, taking place in the boardroom over a $900 million deal, and internal, playing out in the CEO's mind as she weighs the price of dignity against the lure of financial gain. The resolution, when she cancels the deal, represents more than a business decision. It is the culmination of an emotional and ethical journey, a moment when she asserts that respect is non-negotiable, and that true power lies in the freedom to choose integrity over wealth. The conflict begins subtly, often disguised as banter, a joke, or a tone of condescension. Billionaire families accustomed to power rarely attack directly. Instead, they test boundaries, probe for weaknesses, and assume their wealth grants them immunity from accountability. In this case, the family mocks the black CEO, perhaps laughing at her background, dismissing her achievements, or making coded comments that diminish her presence. What might seem like casual remarks to them carries a sting sharpened by centuries of exclusion and bias. Their words are not just offensive, they are a reminder of the barriers she has overcome, of the unspoken rules that have long kept boardrooms homogeneous, of the expectation that she should feel grateful just to be there. The conflict thus takes on symbolic weight, transforming the negotiation into a battlefield where history, identity, and personal worth are at stake. For her, the conflict is not only about enduring the insult but also about recognizing what it represents. To ignore the mockery would be to accept the premise that money justifies disrespect, that her role as CEO is secondary to their privilege. Yet to respond is risky, for she must calculate how her reaction will affect not only the deal but also her reputation in an industry that scrutinizes every move. The conflict intensifies because it is not only between her and the family but also between her inner voices, the pragmatist urging her to swallow the insult for the sake of nearly $1 billion, and the principled leader reminding her that no amount of money can restore dignity once it is publicly compromised. This dual struggle creates tension, because every second of silence in the boardroom stretches like a blade, demanding a choice. On the other side, the billionaire family likely views the conflict differently. To them, it may not even feel like conflict at first. They mock her because they believe their wealth shields them, because they assume she will tolerate anything to secure such a massive deal. In their eyes, the deal itself is the prize, and they are the gatekeepers. They underestimate her because they measure worth only by financial power, not by integrity or moral authority. Their laughter or dismissive comments are meant to remind her that despite her title, she is still, in their minds, an outsider. But conflict is never one-sided, and their failure to recognize the gravity of their actions sets the stage for their downfall. The tension grows when the CEO realizes the decision is hers alone. In that instant, she holds the balance of power, not them. The $900 million is contingent on her signature, her approval, her willingness to continue. The very people mocking her are unknowingly dependent on her, but their arrogance blinds them to this truth. Conflict becomes sharper when the imbalance of perception collides with the reality of control. They see themselves as superior, but in fact, she holds the final word. The weight of this realization transforms the conflict into an opportunity. By choosing dignity over wealth, she can redefine not only the negotiation but also the larger narrative of who holds power in spaces historically dominated by white billionaires. Resolution, in stories and in life, is rarely clean or easy. It comes at a cost, and the greater the conflict, the higher the stakes. For the CEO, canceling the deal is not simply a rejection of money but a rejection of the worldview that disrespects her humanity. The resolution carries emotional weight because it demonstrates that her self-respect, her authority, and her vision for leadership cannot be bought. By saying no, she resolves the conflict on her terms. The family expected compliance, submission, or silence, but the resolution shatters those expectations and forces them to confront the reality that their wealth does not entitle them to mockery without consequence. The act of canceling the deal also resolves the internal conflict she faced. The tension between pragmatism and principle dissolves as she chooses the path aligned with her values. Though it means walking away from a staggering sum, it affirms her identity and solidifies her leadership. Resolution in this sense is not about comfort but about clarity. She emerges from the conflict with a clearer understanding of her priorities, her boundaries, and her power. The family loses the deal, but more importantly, they lose control of the narrative. Their mockery backfires, leaving them diminished in reputation while she emerges with her dignity intact and her influence amplified. Conflict and resolution are not just about winners and losers but about transformation. The conflict transforms the CEO from a participant in the negotiation into a symbol of defiance against disrespect. The resolution transforms the family from untouchable billionaires into cautionary examples of arrogance. The story resonates beyond the boardroom because it reflects universal truths about human interaction, that respect cannot be bought, that power is not merely financial, and that resolution comes from choices that affirm one's values. The cancelled deal becomes more than a financial event. It becomes a cultural moment, a declaration that integrity is worth more than numbers on a contract. The beauty of this theme lies in its ripple effect. Conflict and resolution do not remain confined to the people directly involved but influence everyone watching. Employees within her company see her decision and understand that their leader values dignity over profit, inspiring loyalty and pride. Other business leaders hear of the cancellation and recognize that arrogance can cost dearly, prompting reflection on how they treat partners. Communities watching from the outside interpret her resolution as a victory against systemic disrespect, a reminder that power can be reclaimed through choices rooted in self-worth. In each case, the conflict and its resolution generate a legacy larger than the deal itself. Even in literature and storytelling traditions, the most powerful resolutions are those where the protagonist sacrifices something material to gain something intangible but enduring. Heroes who walk away from treasure for the sake of principle are remembered longer than those who accumulate wealth without honor. In this case, the CEO embodies that archetype, choosing to cancel a deal that would have enriched her company but diminished her spirit. Her resolution is memorable because it speaks to the universal struggle between external rewards and internal integrity. The cancelled deal becomes a story retold, a lesson in boardrooms and classrooms, a parable about the real cost of disrespect and the ultimate triumph of dignity. The theme of conflict and resolution here also underscores the unpredictability of power dynamics. Those who seem untouchable can fall, and those underestimated can rise. The billionaire family believed their wealth insulated them from consequences, but the resolution of the conflict proves otherwise. Their wealth cannot buy back the trust or the opportunity they lost. On the other hand, the CEO's refusal to compromise solidifies her reputation as a leader of conviction, proving that true resolution comes not from appeasing others but from staying true to oneself.